Hey y'all, I'm Joy. I'm a widow, and I'm also the lucky mom of 4 amazing kiddos. I'm making videos that are sharing my journey from loneliness to navigating the unknown to jumping so far out of my comfort zone, y'all, to create this new beautiful life for my kiddos and I. Having this super strong support system was critical on my journey, and it's what I hope to create here for y'all. Most importantly, this is a safe space here. So go ahead, click that subscribe button. I'm really happy you're here. Forgiveness. We're going to talk about forgiveness today, guys. And I've got a quote to start us off. Anger makes you smaller, while forgiveness forces you to grow beyond what you were. I love this quote. It's kind of intense. It's kind of heavy. It talks about growth, which some of us are excited for, and others not so much. And it kind of depends on where the growth needs to be. A lot of us don't like it. But I'm going to read it one more time because I really like it. Anger makes you smaller, while forgiveness forces you to grow beyond what you were. So we all need forgiveness. We all need to give forgiveness. Forgiveness is a part of our lives if you're a human being. Regardless, aside from grief, we're going to walk in life and people are going to be nasty and, or we're going to be nasty. Like, we've all done something we know we need to ask forgiveness for. For me, it was a really big part, and I feel like forgiveness and grief kind of went hand in hand, and it was a big chunk of my story. I'm gonna cry in this one. This was a really, really personal part of my story. So I think when someone passes away, there's a lot of emotions, right? There's anger, and there's hurt, and blame, and confusion a lot of the times. Just naturally, because we're so upset that they're gone that we need to have something to point out. We need some reason, we need some explanation. And so there's usually there's probably more than that, but there's a regular set of people that you can shift the blame to, right? One, it could be yourself. You blame yourself. Maybe you didn't do a good enough job. Maybe you could have stopped something. Maybe you could have said something or seen something, or you could have been there faster. We blame the doctors. Maybe there was a medical error. They're not smart enough. They didn't do a good job. The list goes on. We could be angry with God. Or you could be angry with the deceased loved one in your life. So somewhere in there, probably at some point, you're going to have these heavy emotions and they're going to fall on one of those 4 people, right? And I think that's part of the confusion. I think there's a lot of confusion when someone passes away, especially if it's sudden or your deceased loved one was too young to pass and we don't understand. For me, I didn't really get angry. Like, Antoine has struggled for so long in his journey with mental health and with bipolar and being in and out of the hospital. And if you go back and watch my videos, I share a lot more detail with you too. But just, there'd been a lot of numbness around it all. And so when he passed, I think I still was so numb that it took a lot of time. And I think a lot of people experienced that numb, just intense cloud. But through it all, I didn't really experience a lot of anger. I wasn't angry at God. I wasn't really angry at the doctors. And I wasn't really angry at myself. But undoubtedly, there was a lot of the questions that kind of pillowed up. I mean, especially because Antoine dealt with being bipolar and he was on medication, and so I was very much like a nurse, and I was the only one who really had close access to him because he had shut off. He had no longer had friends, he didn't talk to people, he didn't interact with people, he wasn't able to keep a job, so there was no one there. So there's definitely a lot of doubt and thoughts that came and ate at me early on with him passing. And I'm not quite, honestly, to be dead honest, I don't know what it was that gave me so much strength other than God. Like, that's what I really want to say it was, I just had a clear vision from the get-go that I wasn't going to waste a lot of time in the doubts and in the what ifs. Because in my heart was broken, and I knew I could be angry at myself, I could ask a lot of questions, I could have the regrets, and I could have these stupid, endless questions that would never have an answer, right? These questions, I could be mad at myself and question myself, why weren't you there? Why is this? How come you didn't take better care of him? How did this happen? I didn't stay there long. if those questions do pop up, I give space for me to have the emotions, kind of like you're seeing now. That's a really hard topic for me to talk about. But I chose very quickly in those moments, you know, within weeks and those first months of Antoine passing, that when those thoughts came to me, I was going to look them clear on and be like, nothing that I do now will give me a clear answer to those questions. Those are the types of questions that are just a waste of energy. They're hurtful questions that are going to pull you down. They will never bring Antoine back. No answer would. So they're a huge waste of time in my eyes. And I just felt like that energy needed to be spent better elsewhere. So my process for that was a lot of being outside, exercise, fresh air, going on walks, journaling. Y'all know, if you watch my videos, I talk about like exercise and journaling are really huge for me. And one of the things that I did that was kind of different, but it worked for me because I'm very visual, and so I like symbolic things. When I had a heavy weight on my shoulders of feeling this grief and this heartache, and I want to say it's like shame, you know, just like the devil was trying to get at me and make me feel bad, as if I was to blame in some way. I would have no part of it. And so I did something very symbolic, even with my children. Actually, we went outside, and I'm fortunate that I lived like a block away from this really cool, sweet oasis little duck pond. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful place with trees, and it's very quiet and just peaceful. And so I went out in my front yard and I grabbed up a giant rock. And I mean, for me, it was giant, right? I'm not a very big person. So I grabbed up a big, huge rock that felt really heavy to me. And I had my kiddos grab some little rocks to carry along. And we walked down to the pond, and I was crying, but I was also like having conversations with the kids and smiling with them. And it was such a healing process, because I decided that this rock was going to be my shame and my confusion and my anger. Anything that I was feeling towards myself that I knew wasn't healing me, that I knew was pulling me down, that I felt like was Satan kind of thrown at my feet to stumble me, I was going to put it all in this rock. This rock was going to be the bad shit that I didn't want in my life anymore. And so it carried the rock down. My kids have their little rocks, and I told them that we were going to throw away the bad parts that we didn't want in our life anymore. And so we threw them into the deep pond where they would sink forever, and I could never get it back. It was gone forever. The weight was off my shoulders, and I wasn't going to carry it. And that was a huge healing moment for myself. And I didn't realize how big it would be, but it was for me. And I don't know if that would be for you, but it's just important to take things that you know have no purpose and don't serve you and get rid of them. And it's not always that easy. Like, obviously I have setbacks and I have moments where I have to stop and I have to think and check myself. But it was monumental. So that's kind of where I went and how I dealt with it. So I highly recommend getting outside, walks, journaling. You know, even I another example I have is I would write myself a letter, and I would write this long letter about the things that were lies, that weren't true, that were lies from Satan. That's why I always put it. I was like, these are lies that Satan's trying to sew up my life and mess it up. And so I gave myself permission to forgive myself and to let go, even though there's nothing that I did to cause Antoine's death. There's nothing I could have done to stop it. But I was not going to let any more lies or anything grab at my ankles and pull me down and weight, because there's too many important things that I can do with that energy. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is being married. Anyone who's been married, you know that there's hard stuff in marriage that comes up, and there's hurt. If you've lived with someone long enough, chances are you've hurt them. And one of the hardest factors for me was that Antoine and I have been married for 12 and a half years. And of course we'd hurt each other's feelings and, you know, said things that we didn't mean, and made each other feel bad at times. And before Antoine passed, he had been struggling with mental health and bipolar for several years before that. And so in that time frame, I had not gotten to communicate with him. I had not ever gotten to share my feelings because he wasn't well enough. He wouldn't have been able to process it or forgive me, or I wouldn't be able to ask him to, you know, help me heal through things that hurt me. There was just no way to communicate or talk about those things because he wasn't in the right mind. I was just there because I made a promise I was going to be there and I was going to love him to the end, and I would have done anything for that man. I absolutely loved him and was so thankful for all that he'd done in my life, that I was going to be there and be a nursemaid and take care of him. So I wasn't ever able in those last few years to ever talk about things that had hurt me. And when he passed, it was really hard because what I wasn't expecting and wasn't aware of is that that anger and that hurt would come back up. And of course I was devastated because he was gone, but there was other things that came up in life that reminded me of this hurt that Antoine had put in my life, and that now I had to heal and work through it on my own. And that anger flashed up a few times really heavily. And I decided that I was going to write Antoine a letter. And I think writing a letter to the person you love, who you've lost, is a fantastic idea. It was so healing for me, and I really highly encourage anyone to try it regardless. It doesn't have to be a letter of forgiveness. It doesn't have to be a letter of anger, confusion. It can be. Those are good letters to write. Any emotions that you're having inside, I think it's great to write it down on pen and paper. But it could be a letter of love too, and I've written those to Antoine as well. And it has been so healing for me. I just sat down and I wrote out all of my feelings and all the things that I'd never gotten to share when he was really sick and going through things. And it was so empowering for me because it let me feel them. It let me express the things and be real. And then it let me let them go. And I burned that letter afterwards because it was a letter to him of saying, you hurt me. And now I'm carrying this all by myself. But because I love you and I know that you love me, I'm going to get through these things. And I just wanted to share with you guys the power of forgiveness, because the hurt takes up a lot of space in your life. And it may take up way more space than you're even aware of, because it absorbs and it sucks and it takes pieces of our brain and makes things look ugly and negative. And pretty soon you're not aware of how much space you've allowed this ugliness to take up. So when you start healing, when you start processing, when you start acknowledging it, it will be painful. I promise you that. But you'll start taking the pain and turning it into purpose. And that is the most healing, amazing feeling. And is the reason that I stand here on my 2 feet, so strong, so resilient, so proud, and so able to share my story with y'all, because I wasn't afraid to face the fire and to say, how can I heal? What can I get out of this? So I really encourage you that whether you're walking through grief or not, if there is a person you need to forgive today, or maybe you've done something and you need to go ask for forgiveness, to embrace that. And maybe sit down and write a letter first and make sure it's not too nasty or mean. I think writing is a good way to process before you go forwards. But I encourage you to try it, and just remember, I'm going to read the quote one more time. Anger makes you smaller. And it sucks you in, it absorbs your energy, it takes space in your brain and your heart that could be used for so many better things. Anger makes you smaller, while forgiveness forces you to grow beyond what you were. Growing is painful, but it's amazing when you get on this side. I can't even tell you, the growth that I've seen in myself for the 1.5 years. It's only been 1.5 years, and I'm so beyond proud. I'm a completely different woman from where I started over here. And that's because I got an amazing support system, and because I wasn't afraid to look pain in the face. I wasn't afraid to acknowledge where I've screwed up. And when I started thinking about forgiveness and I started these letters, it brought up things in myself that I realized, I hurt Antoine this way. Antoine hurt me this way. But it has made me so much bigger and healthier and stronger and able to communicate in ways that I never could before. So I just encourage you today, forgiveness gives you the power back. It doesn't mean that what the person did was right. It doesn't brush it under the rug. It means that you're free. Your brain is no longer wrapped up and holding that on and hanging on to it and hurting and thinking about it way too many times and reliving it. Once you've forgiven them and you let it go, it doesn't have a power over you. And that is the freedom that I wish for all of you, my friends. Everybody deserves to live that way. It is so healing. I wouldn't change it for the world. So that's what I gotta say today. Thank you for being here. If you have any questions or comments or anything, like I always said, I'm open book. I'm very raw, very honest. I like to share my story because when I share my pain, not only is it healing for me, but I hope that it can bring some hope to your day. So please share this video with someone that you know is walking through grief or hurt or needs some forgiveness in their life or needs to forgive others. Let's work together. I just want to be a team that encourages and lifts people up and uses our resources, uses our pain, uses our truth, uses our stories. All right, guys, I love you. Have a good week. Please go out and do something positive this week that you enjoy, whether it's writing a letter to yourself or to someone else. Let's get this week and make it the best one. Bye, guys.